On the night of May 29, 1832, a 20-year-old mathematician sat down and wrote just as fast as he could. He was absolutely certain he would be dead by morning. In the margins of his work, he furiously scrawled the words, "I do not have the time," and he was right. He died the very next day. But the mathematics he left behind? Well, after being completely ignored for 14 years, it turned out to solve a problem that had defeated every mathematician on Earth for 3.5 centuries. His name was Évariste Galois, and nobody has ever fully explained how a 20-year-old knew what entire generations could not.
I do not have the time. Seriously, try to imagine the profound emotional weight behind that single sentence. Those words, they weren't some dramatic flourish. They were scrawled furiously in the margins of his mathematical manuscripts as the hours literally slipped away. This was a young man who knew an opponent's pistol was waiting for him at daybreak.
Let's dive into this explainer, because the stakes here are almost unbelievable. Think about it. We have a 20-year-old kid holding the answer to a puzzle that had utterly defeated generations of the greatest minds on the planet, right as his life was about to be violently cut short in a duel at dawn.
Section 1. The Legend and the Reality.
Évariste Galois is the founder of group theory, a branch of mathematics that today literally secures everything from our digital cryptography to our fundamental understanding of abstract algebra. But to truly understand the sheer tragedy of that final night, we need to rewind his incredibly short life and look at how the world actually treated him.
Section 2. A Mind Ignored.
You see, the devastating truth is that Galois didn't just emerge from a vacuum. He emerged from a system that utterly failed him. His breakthrough, what we now call Galois theory, fundamentally transformed a 350-year-old puzzle. For centuries, mathematicians had been completely obsessed with finding formulas to solve complex polynomial equations. But Galois, he realized they were asking the wrong question entirely. He shifted the whole mathematical world from searching for raw formulas to studying the permutations and the deep symmetry of the roots. He was basically building the architecture of modern algebra.
But here's the crucial point. How did the establishment react to this massive structural breakthrough? Well, it's almost comical. First, he submits his work in 1829, and the great mathematician Augustin Louis Cauchy tells him, "Hey, rewrite this for a grand prize." Galois actually obliges. Then, he submits the consolidated memoir to Joseph Fourier. But Fourier tragically dies just weeks later, and Galois' manuscript is simply lost among his private papers. Finally, he submits it a third time, and Siméon Denis Poisson, one of the absolute leading figures of the era, rejects it, bluntly declaring the work incomprehensible.
And it wasn't just his research getting rejected either. Galois was actively colliding with the academic gatekeepers at every single turn. He twice failed the entrance exam to the highly prestigious École Polytechnique. Why? Because he did incredibly complex math entirely in his head, and he flat out refused to conform to their methodical, rigid exam styles. In fact, during one oral exam, a professor just couldn't follow his logic, a huge argument broke out, and Galois literally threw an eraser right at the examiner's face. Later on, after settling for a lesser school, the École Normale, he ended up getting expelled for writing a fiery public letter criticizing the school's director.
Section 3. The Teenage Revolutionary.
All these academic rejections, combined with the tragic suicide of his father, who had been viciously targeted by political opponents, pushed this passionate, brilliant young mind straight into the explosive world of 1830s Parisian politics. Galois became a fierce Republican activist. In May 1831, at a raucous banquet, he stood up and proposed a toast to the king while brandishing an open dagger. Yeah, that act got him arrested. He was actually acquitted, but by July, right on Bastille Day, he was out leading protests in the illegal uniform of a disbanded militia, heavily armed with a loaded rifle and pistols. This time, he was sentenced to 6 months in Saint-Pélagie prison. His political actions were just as uncompromising and radical as his mathematics.
Section 4. The Myth versus Reality.
Which brings us right back to that candlelit room on the night of May 29, 1832, just weeks after his release from prison. Now, the popular myth, heavily popularized by historian Eric Temple Bell, claims Galois spent the night in a frantic, manic panic, inventing the foundations of group theory from scratch because he knew he was going to die. But the beautiful truth, based on the actual historical record, is entirely different. The duel he was facing, it wasn't some grand political assassination, it was almost certainly a genuine, senseless affair of honor over a woman. And Galois wasn't discovering new math that night. He was a clear-headed youth, desperately and meticulously curating his existing ideas to ensure they survived him.
In his final hours, he actually took the very paper that Poisson had rejected and made precise, careful corrections and annotations in the margins. He wrote a brilliant testamentary letter to his friend Auguste Chevalier, summarizing his theorems, including his theory of ambiguity. He ended by begging Chevalier to publicly print the letter so that the absolute greatest minds of Europe, Gauss and Jacobi, might finally review his work. So you see, he wasn't in some fevered dream. He was a 20-year-old acting as the meticulous executor of his own scientific estate.
Section 5. The senseless duel. Because despite his incredible efforts to save his life's work, he couldn't save his life. The next morning, May 30th, 1832, brought a violent, completely anticlimactic end to his chaotic journey. He faced his opponent near a pond, was shot in the abdomen, and tragically was abandoned in a field by the seconds.
A passing peasant eventually found him and took him to a hospital. His younger brother Alfred rushed to his bedside in tears, and Galois looked at his weeping brother and spoke his final, devastating words. "Don't cry, I need all my courage to die at 20. He succumbed to the infection shortly after.
Section 6. The aftermath.
What followed was just a profound silence. 14, that is the number of years his revolutionary, world-changing work sat completely ignored after his death. It wasn't until 1846 that a mathematician named Joseph Liouville finally reviewed Galois' manuscripts, recognized their towering genius, and published them for the world to see. 14 years of a lost revolution.
Contrast the monumental legacy he eventually achieved, a legacy that literally underpins modern abstract algebra, coding theory, and the cryptography that secures our digital world, with the delicate, humanizing sketch of him at just 15 years old. Ultimately, he was just a misunderstood boy trying to show the world something beautiful.
Section 7. The lost minds.
The story of Évariste Galois forces us to reflect on a broader, much quieter tragedy. How many Galois-level minds have been lost to poverty, to war, to institutional rejection, and to obscurity? And what did we, as a civilization, lose with them? We got lucky with Galois, because a 20-year-old spent his final hours desperately making sure his ideas survived him. But it really makes you wonder about the ones who ran out of time.